Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by TheLines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, Weitzer. One more day separate here before Nate gets back home. We are going to be looking at best bets in this episode, some sides and totals looks for you. Also have player props up in a separate one, so make sure you are checking out both videos and subscribe to that channel all season long. Nice little 6-1 on the day yesterday for the kids, so we're going to look to keep it going here. Let's go ahead and jump right into Nate's first best bet of the night.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Thunder defense to kind of throttle the Pistons. I'm wondering if the Pistons offense, the wheels are just going to fall off here. Without Cade Cunningham, at least they're going to struggle in a second consecutive game against like a real opponent here. Minnesota just shut them down, held them to a 36% field goal, 38% inside the arc. Previously, they beat two tankers. They beat the Cavs, who just don't care right now. They've locked up the number one seed. They're happy to play high-scoring games. And, 4 games that Cade missed in November, they averaged just 102 a game on 44% shooting. Went 1-3 in those games. This is a 14-point spread. The Thunder are definitely live to cover that. They're 13-1 ATS in their last 14. So if you want to just play it that way, that's great. But I'm fading them personally by going under 107.5 on the Pistons team total because I think that they just cannot score with the Thunder here. Maybe it's like a 120 to 106 game and you lose on the hook there. But I think OKC's defense is going to be ferocious here. They held Detroit under this total when they met in Detroit with Cade Cunningham playing just a few weeks ago. They've held 7 straight opponents under 107.5, this team total, including that game prior to these two insanely paced games against the Pacers and Bulls. And still, we're only talking 114 a game given up in those two. Detroit's not playing at the same type of pace as those two teams. They're down to 96 in their last 4 without Cade. They have depended on free throws in these last 4, again, mostly against tankers. And they only got 13 free throw attempts against OKC, which now is the fully formed Death Star with Chet, J-Dub, Caruso even, ready to go here to hound the Pistons perimeter guys. Also, Marcus Sasser is suspended right now, so it's just going to be Schroeder running the offense. And while you got to respect him, I don't think he can completely, do anything to get OKC on their back heels defensively. And on the other end, if you are thinking just minus 14, SGA, I don't know if it's like he has family come watch when he's in Detroit, but coming off 48 in that point performance, he is now averaging 35 a game his last 5 against Detroit. It's the closest to his native Ontario. Maybe there's something to that there. So another angle to consider is the old SGA 30 plus in a win or an alt spread here. I think OKC continues to just put the hammer down, just unbelievable stuff from this team in the regular season.
First bet for me on the day here is going to be Dallas taking on Atlanta, and I think Dallas is pretty back, honestly. We got Atlanta getting waxed over last night, and now we're on the second night of the back-to-back here. And they are going to be in a bad spot. I say waxed over. They came back against Portland. I'll be clear. I watched the end of that game. I know they came back against Portland on the back of Trae Young. Still wasn't enough. So looking at Dallas here, I do think they're going to have their way. Not have their way. I should be very clear. I'm using a lot of sort of overemphasis on this one. I just think Dallas is so underrated with how good their actual roster is. And now it's back, right? They're missing a couple guys, but for the most part, they got AD, they've got Gafford, they've got Dinwiddie, they've got Max Christie still. Everyone's still Najee, everyone's still out there. Obviously, it's just Kyrie that we're missing at this point. But this is still a team that in the last 5 games, up to 8th in defensive rating, still 20th in offensive rating. All of this is AD. AD's the reason that they are 8th in defensive rating in their last 5. He's also, not out there enough to get involved in the offense to really up that too much. They're still 20th in offensive rating. But I think they're going to have a decent time limiting what the Hawks want to do. As we've seen, it's really important that you're really just stopping the Hawks playing at a really high pace, looking to get out into transition with a pretty high frequency. They're 4th in terms of transition frequency here as of late. But guess who the number 1 defense in transition is in the last 5? It's Dallas, and they've been that now actually for a good amount of games. They've been good all season, limiting the fast break, but when they've got their guys back in the last 5, they're back up to number 1 overall. And that's a huge part of this. If you are stopping above the break threes, if you're stopping corner threes, and you're stopping the transition, you're probably stopping Trae Young. Now, how do you guard the pick and roll play? Also super important. Dallas in top 15, right about 12th best, limiting pick and roll plays to the pick and roll ball handler. Also very, 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 very good limiting the guy rolling to the basket. Would not be looking at Okongwu points to the over. Let me put it that way. Going to be a lot of AD limiting what he wants to do on offense. Maybe some assists again for Okongwu, because this is going to be a tough matchup for him to score on. Might be forced to kick the ball back out and do a lot of dribble handoff up top. But I digress. I don't care what Okongwu does, because I know that this defense for Dallas down low is going to continue to wreak havoc as long as they have our boy Anthony Davis out there. With him in the last 5, up to 8th in paint field goal percentage to their opponent, and they continue to really limit threes at a really, really nice clip here. The number 1 above the break three defense in terms of limiting attempts from above the break, and the corner threes as well, gotten a lot better. We're a little bit bad, but in their last 10, up to 4th best in terms of limiting corner threes as well. And this Hawks team, 8th in above the break 3 frequency, 6th in corner 3 frequency. And so that's going to be what you need to stop, right? I do think that this Dallas team is going to be really well poised to go ahead and cover this really small spread in a game that I know that they want to keep winning.
Yeah, Celtics hosting the Heat here. Andrew Wiggins being out is going to be a pretty big deal. So I would take the Celtics at minus 10.5. Heat, I mean, it's kind of fool's gold lately to think about who they've been beating, like Wizards, Sixers in their last 2. On this 5-game win streak, they did smack the Dubs, who came to town with Jimmy in the Jimmy revenge game. But otherwise, they've been one of the worst teams in the league prior to that little 5-game stretch they're on. Boston looking absolutely unbeatable on their road trip. Now, I mean, you got to worry a little bit with KP, Jaylen Brown, Drew questionable. But again, yeah, Andrew Wiggins is out, and Tatum is going to be able to do whatever the hell he wants, basically, because of that. That the Heat are not going to have an answer for him. And I mean, I'm thinking under for this game if you can get it above the 215 that it's kind of creeping up towards, because the pace of both these teams play at, because they both are top 2 actually in limiting free throws recently. But I'm just a little scared of Boston, really having a give a care factor, because they hate the Heat, and they've just been like, we have to, get rid of this boogeyman. And since, if you guys remember the Game 2 miracle last playoffs where the Heat shot 50% from 3 or whatever the hell it was, they beat Boston even the series. Since then, it's just been an absolute clinic of how to shut down an offense. Like they scored 85 a game in the rest of that series. They have now averaged 93 a game their last 4 regular season games against Boston with a 102 offensive rating. And those games are played at just a 91 pace. And Boston is the slowest paced team in the league in the last month. Every time these teams meet, it seems to be played at a snail's pace as Spoelstra tries to mix up the defenses and keep Boston off guard. And look, I just don't think it's going to work right now. I don't think Tyler Hero is going to get much going. Considering how high his props are, that's a great fade right here. See that in player props as well. But I think, yeah. But whether you want Boston to win, Boston to hold them under, it's basically the theme here today, is that these really good teams back home. This is kind of like the last real home game for Boston. They have Phoenix, which is a wounded duck right now, and Washington. Then they have a couple on the road, and then they close back-to-back against Charlotte. So this is the last opportunity to really flex, get in your playoff form. I hope that 2 out of the 3 guys I mentioned at least are a go here. And then that will indicate that, yeah, Joe Maz is saying, let's go out there, kick Miami's ass, because we really don't like those guys. And we're going to win this one by double digits, and then you cash that check.
Closing it out with the Kings and the Wizards. Just going to go for an over here. I don't trust either of these teams in any way, but I do trust them to score, or at least not play defense very well. That's really what we're banking on here. The Kings, bad, man. Just been really bad. In the last 10, 26th in defensive rating. In the last 15, they're 30th in defensive rating, right? This is one of the worst 3-point defenses in the league, maybe the worst now at this point. And I just see the pace staying pretty high when you have Washington still playing at the 4th fastest pace, and this SAC team up to about 12th in pace here over their last 5 games as well. And they played some pretty good teams, but really it just comes down to this defense for Washington not being able to stop anything. It's not like this Sacramento offense has been world beaters by any means, but the pace that they've been playing at, the increased pace, is what I feel comfortable with in terms of betting on this over for both of these teams. If you look at the way that Sac is going to want to keep scoring, it's going to keep getting into the paint and the mid-range, right? Now that you have DeMar and Zach LaVine, you've got 2 guys willing to shoot in the mid-range, especially DeMar. This is the number 1 mid-range frequency defense, and this is the 29th ranked mid-range defense, right? So I should say number one most frequent offense in terms of shooting mid-range shots. For the Wizards on the other side, they are 29th in limiting mid-range stuff. So the one-on-one stuff, all the ISO, right? The Wizards are in the bottom 5 limiting isolation plays. They don't have the one-on-one defenders to do any of this stuff. We're not going to have any Marcus Smart in there to limit Monk or anything that Levine or DeMar want to do. There's no good matchups for them. Guys are really just going to have their way. And the fact that again, I'll just draw my attention right back to it, which is the pace. While they're playing this well on offense against a Wizards team that can't play defense, the pace is what matters, right? Even if the pace wasn't as high as it is, might not feel as comfortable as this, but in the top 10 in pace in their last 5 games for the Kings, I'm going to bank on them to keep that high. So that's all the time we have for you in best bets, though. Make sure you are subscribed to that channel and continue to follow along. So we see you next. Happy betting.